Namaste everyone. In today's video, we're going to focus on Muni Patanjali's Yoga Sutra 4.10. Now in this particular Yoga Sutra, Muni Patanjali is helping us to understand why sanskara and smriti are both beginningless and almost eternal. There's a particular facet that makes them so beginningless, and we're going to try and understand what exactly that facet is. So let's take a good look at the sutra, start breaking it up word by word and understanding it a little bit better. So the sutra itself goes, Tasam ditvan chashisho nityatvat. Alright, so this is the sutra itself, quite a compact sutra here. Now let's start breaking it up word by word and understanding what it's trying to communicate. So the first word that we have here is tasam, which refers to of those. So it's talking about of those, the sanskaras and the smriti from the previous sutra. Then we come to the next word, which is anaditva. Anaditva means something that does not have a beginning. So something that is beginningless, which is anaditva. Then comes the syllable cha, which means and then comes Ashish. So this is the key word here in this sutra, which is talking about the will to live, or Ashish. Then we come to the final word, which is nityatva. And this is referring to something that is eternal. So on account of the eternality, the nityatva. Alright, so now that we've understood the meanings of each of the words, let's combine all of this together and try to understand what it's trying to communicate. So first of all, it's saying over here that the reason the sanskara and the karmas, which are the karma sanskaras, along with the smriti, are so beginningless is because of the ashisha, or the eternal will to live. So it's explaining to us really that there is no beginning. It's like saying, did the egg come first or the chicken? And we usually don't have a response to that because it's cyclical. We don't really know which one came first. But here we're being told that the ashisha, perhaps the will to live, emerges first, and because of the emergence of the will to live emerges the sanskaras and the smriti. And that is how all of it is just cyclical, just going on. It's beginningless and almost endless in a way, unless you have the knowledge of how to bring it to a closure through these processes and practices which are being explained in this particular path. So now let's take a deeper dive into the sutra and start unfolding it to understand what its meaning really is. So one very important thing that we're understanding from this word ashisha is that it's very similar to the modern day understanding of having the preservation of life or the desire to continue living. Very naturally within all our biological systems, the body wants to save itself. And the minute there's any kind of threat or any, sort of threat to life itself, the body will kick into action and literally try to save itself from harm or danger, sometimes even by triggering an illness or a disease to protect it from going any further or harming the body. That's why we also know tonsillitis to be localization of the infection within the tonsils so that it doesn't go deeper or spread further. So it's actually in a way a defense mechanism of the body which goes all the way to the extent of creating tonsillitis to make sure that the body stays safe. So we can say that there's a very strong will to live within the prakritic elements, and therefore all of the elements react like this because they're trying to preserve life. And internally as well, we all know that we have that strong will to live within us. And in most cases, this will to live is pretty natural. And because of this will to live, or this tendency to want to come to life, there is the presence of sanskaras and the karmashraya, which literally seems eternal or endless. So if we trace it back to its source, it probably is at the same time that time began, or that creation or the universe came into manifestation. All of this is that eternal. It has come from that time period and is just being passed on and carried forward lifetime after lifetime. So what is really important here to understand is this concept of Ashish, which is a really important terminology that will help us to understand how exactly does the will to live bring about this entire creation in this way. Right? It's also a sense of feeling separate, wanting to live as an independent entity, which kind of brings us into this sanyog, or this illusion between Purusha Prakriti. Then we have the whole of life coming about, Shrishti is created, and the whole process continues. So this is an extremely sort of important facet to understand throughout the sutra. Now, one thing to pay attention to here is that Ashish is different from Abhinavesha, which was also a desire to live that we had studied as a klesha, right, which was a pain point. So the important difference here is that Ashish is a positive, sort of eternal, very good-natured will to live. Whereas when we look at the other word, Abhinavesha, it's more egoistic, it's more domineering, it's a negative tendency to live and to control and to preserve. So there's a difference in their connotations and the way in which both these words are being used and understood. And therefore we need to remember that Ashish is not exactly the same as Abhinavesha. They have qualitative differences and they need to be understood a little bit differently. So this is one of the essential differences. And one more thing that we can keep in mind throughout this practice is that finding out when the sanskara exactly started would be very difficult for the common person, because we don't have like binoculars or those kind of instruments that we can see the entire timeline or kind of realize at which point did what happen. And because of that, since we don't have the ability to do that, it seems like an endless cycle to us. But a yoga sadhak would eventually realize that, okay, the cycle of the timeline is like this. It starts with Ashisha, the will to live, which then triggers the sanskaras, which then triggers the smriti, which then triggers the vasan, which leads to a karma or an action. So in this way, it kind of really, the cycle keeps on going, and then from karma again, it continues in a cyclical way. So this cycle is endless until the yoga sadhak decides that the will to live is slowly going to be withdrawn, so that instead of being separate from the infinite, we merge right into it. Now, this is an important principle to keep in mind, because a lot of times people have a misconception when they think that Mahasamadhi is being suggested. There is this misconception to think, is it suggesting death? Now, this is a very, very important thing to understand, because as the laws of physics also state, energy is neither created nor destroyed, it can only be transformed. So once we understand this very key principle, we will realize that nothing is actually going anywhere, nothing is being reduced. Death is not a finality. There's, so when somebody passes away or dies, they simply transfer their form and they move into the next realm. There is no death of that entity in its entirety. What does die or what does perish is that particular body, that particular combination of elements in that lifetime, right? So the body that I have now, once that perishes, the next body or whatever that I start to inhabit is not going to have the exact same look, appearance, and the exact same combination of Prakriti. It might be different based on my karmic tendencies and where I need to go next. That body will kind of be differently made for that purpose. So what is important here is that once the chitta is going from one body to another, being carried forward, it is not going anywhere, right? So unless, even when Mahasamadhi happens and one says that he or she is merged into the infinite consciousness, that means that person is not lost. They've simply merged into it. And through that merger, they have come to the whole, right? So they have, in a way, really come back to the kingdom of God in that sense. And so when we look at the infinite and we understand it with that lens, we can see how nothing is being taken away. The form is being changed, and that form is being changed in order for it to, because of the desire really of the yogi to go in the direction of Kaivalya and or not to go in that direction. Right? Because some of us are not necessarily intending to go there. We're okay kind of just staying in this hybrid form, being with a body. So it entirely depends on the path that you choose to go down and how you choose to structure it. So I hope you found this video helpful. Of course, as always, this video is just an overall gist, a very thematic overview of the sutra. We go into it in much more depth in our classes, courses and workshops, the links for which are in the description. Apart from that, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a big thumbs up, share it with your friends and family, and also subscribe to the channel because we release new videos every single week. Now, we cannot wait to see you in the next video. Until then, keep practicing, stay safe, and we're going to see you very soon. Namaste.